Man, it almost feels surreal to even put this into words. But here goes. You ever watch shows like Breaking Bad or Ozark? How they have those businesses that are actually fronts, like a gas station in Breaking Bad or a casino in Ozark, set up purely for laundering money? Like on the surface, everything looks legit, but underneath it all, it's this elaborate scheme just moving dirty cash around. That was kind of the vibe I stumbled into about 6 years ago here in the US when I got what seemed like a pretty decent gig at a tech startup. Now, I wasn't technically an employee. That was part of the weirdness. I was hired as a 1099 contractor, an independent contractor. And that wasn't just me. Pretty much everyone in this office of about 30 people was in the same boat. You know how most companies have HR, making sure you follow certain rules or asking for performance metrics or giving feedback? Yeah, none of that was really a thing here. It was like this weird gray area where you're on contract but sitting right inside the company with perks and everything, but without the usual structure. This startup occupied a penthouse suite right in a swanky downtown building. I remember walking in on my first day, stepping off the elevator, and looking around at this polished, sleek office space. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views stretching across the city, glossy white desks, trendy lighting, you get the image. What blew me away was the perks, free catered meals every day, snacks stocked in the kitchen, and hey, they even had a masseuse who came in a couple times a week. Yeah, a real masseuse. At the time, it just screamed success. Like this company was really making waves and had the cash flow to burn. And my paycheck? Solid, but not eye-wateringly high. Comfortable enough that I could relax financially, pay rent no problem, even save a bit. Definitely above average for a starting tech sales role, but nothing that would raise eyebrows or make me wonder how they could afford it. But early on, something about the whole situation felt off, you know? From the get-go, I got this creeping sense that the place was more appearance than substance. Everyone was bustling around, typing on laptops, having meetings, chatting near the coffee machine. But truthfully, no one seemed to be doing anything. I was selling software licenses, at least that was my official job title, but I realized pretty quickly no one was tracking sales numbers or pushing to hit goals. I thought, maybe that's part of being a contractor? But I knew from past gigs, especially sales, that your numbers are everything. You're constantly asked for updates, targets, projections, but here? Not a word about sales performance came up. No one asked me for a pipeline report or how many demos I'd booked. No performance reviews, no pressure at all to deliver. It was bizarre. And without having done much like legitimately closed deals for the first 2 months, I even got a raise. Yeah, a raise. I was dumbfounded. Who just hands out raises when there's zero proof you're earning it? It was the first real glaring red flag. But oddly, it didn't hit me fully at the time. It was like being in this dream that was half ideal and half unsettling. There was this gnawing feeling, call it an unease, that I couldn't shake. I kept asking myself, why is this so easy? Why is nobody pushing accountability? It was like everyone was pretending to work, everyone kept up appearances, but none of it added up. Then, about 3 weeks in, the company brings in a new sales manager. This guy, let's call him Mark, to keep things simple, was fresh-faced and seemed to be just as baffled by the situation as I was. One day, we grabbed coffee downtown, and I remember him saying something like, "I don't know what's going on here. It feels weird. Like this isn't really a proper business." That was a relief, honestly. It felt good to have someone else express the suspicion I only dared whisper to myself. Mark wasn't just feeling it, he started digging. And when he came back a few days later, his face was tight. He shared something pretty damning. Roughly $300,000 every month was being funneled out to an obscure account based in California. The account was labeled with nonsense terms like engineering or tech support, but the payments didn't align with anything that made sense given the company's size or supposed business. Salaries, overhead, hardware, software costs, nothing matched these huge outgoing transfers. I asked him, "So what do you think that's for?" He shook his head and said, "I don't know, but it doesn't feel right." And then, just days after sharing all this, Mark walked out, quit with little explanation other than, "It just doesn't feel right here. I can't do this." That was another gut punch. His departure just left this heavy silence hanging over the office. Weeks passed, and then the whole thing unraveled. News started leaking that the startup was under investigation. Investors found irregularities, law enforcement got involved. It turned out the CEO had been arrested, accused of running a money laundering scheme. The other executives were gone, disappeared into the woodwork. From all I could piece together, the whole operation was a shell, just a front. The business existed on paper and in this fancy office, but the money was being shuffled behind the scenes, cleaned through the company accounts and sent elsewhere. I mean, it was exactly like those TV shows, a real-life money laundering scheme disguised as a burgeoning tech startup. For me, it was strangely a relief. Since I was a contractor, legally I was clear. I wasn't implicated, didn't face any charges, no questions asked. It was almost like I was a ghost in a haunted house that suddenly caught fire and burned down after I left. I moved on to a new job shortly after, but the entire experience left a mark. Looking back, it really makes you wonder how often this happens. How many people unknowingly clock in every day at a job that's just a facade for laundering money or worse? I developed a kind of radar after that. Things that seemed off in a workplace took on new meaning. It's a weird kind of expertise, built out of shock and awkward self-preservation. I wish more than anything that I was making this up. That it was some weird story I heard secondhand and not something I actually walked through. But I'm not. This was as real as it gets. The details here are a little vague. That's intentional because of ongoing litigation, and I never got the full official story, but the pattern was unmistakable. Money laundering with a side of embezzlement or misappropriation, probably. Since then, I haven't stepped into anything even remotely like that. No more shady money shuffles or unexplained raises, thankfully. But I'll never forget the strange haze of that startup, the mix of luxury perks, the elegant office, the feeling of privilege paired with creeping distrust. It was like being in a polished cage. And even now, when I look back, I'm just grateful I made it out before things blew up in everyone's faces. Despite how crazy it all was, it's a reminder that sometimes the things that seem too good to be true, well, they usually are. But you can't always see the game until you're in the middle of it. That's where I was. Right in the middle of a sketchy, once-in-a-lifetime mess I never signed up for but somehow got through, with a story that sounds like it belongs on TV but doesn't. And yeah, I wish I could say that was fiction, but it wasn't, not by a long shot.